Neopets used to be huge, and when I say huge, I mean huge. It was so popular that it even got itself a McDonald's commercial. And you know you've made it as a company once you have Happy Meal toys for your brand. They even came out with a PS2 game the year afterwards called Neopets the Darkest Fairy, which apparently wasn't even that bad of a game, though it apparently wasn't that good either. That very same year, in June of 2005, Neopets was sold to Viacom for $160 million, which should tell you just how popular this website was back in the day. But the website just isn't that popular anymore. In January of 2020, the website only logged an average of 3.4 million page views per month. And although that sounds like a lot, Neopets was once reported to have been able to average over 4 billion web page views per month back in 2005. That's a significant difference. So, what changed? A lot, I guess. The website went through another ownership change in 2014, and without doing any super hard research, I'm going to guess that a lot of the user base just simply grew up and forgot about Neopets. And let's be real, a whole lot more games have come out that are a lot more engaging. But let's talk more about Neopets. In case you've been living under a rock for the last 2 decades, or in case you're a boomer or an iPad baby, then Neopets is a virtual pet website where your goal is essentially to take care of your fake animals called Neopets. You can feed them, train them, play with them, and do a whole lot more other things. Because at its core, Neopets is a website that urges you to collect things for your pets. And collecting things costs money. And in this case, a virtual currency called Neopoints. You can earn Neopoints through an assortment of different tasks. You can resell items from the store, you can get them through collecting interest at the bank, you can get them from investing in stocks, or you can even get them from playing the many flash games that are on the website. But wait. Flash games? Those are dead now, aren't they? To answer that question in the simplest manner possible, yes, they're dead. In January of 2021, most internet browsers started blocking Flash without the ability to activate it anymore. And if you want to know the gist of it, it was because of the many security vulnerabilities that Flash had. Because of this, the majority of the games on Neopets just simply don't work anymore. You can use a workaround by using an alternate browser, but it just doesn't feel the same. I don't know why, but it just doesn't. One of the few surviving games on the website, however, is NeoQuest II and its predecessor, NeoQuest I. And NeoQuest II is our subject for today's video. I loved NeoQuest II as a kid. In fact, I loved Neopets in general. When I was younger, I just loved to play free games, no matter what they were. I found whatever Flash games I could on Miniclip, on Congregate, and on addictinggames.com. I think kids these days play games on Cool Math Games, or at least that's what I think they do. MMOs were huge for me too. Maplestory and especially RuneScape were my lifeblood. I'm sure it was for many kids of my generation. When you're poor and you can't buy your own games, it's easy to turn to the most popular stuff on the internet that's free. And that's why I sank so many unhealthy hours into these games, and NeoQuest II was no exception. I'm a lifelong RPG fan, loving games spanning from Golden Sun to Final Fantasy Tactics to Fallout, and even all the way to The Witcher 3. So when I found out that Neopets had their own RPG on their website, I just had to try it. And like I said, I'm pretty sure I loved it. But is NeoQuest II as good as I remember it being? Let's find out. NeoQuest II is a very dated game, and you can tell because of its mechanics. Remember, this game was released on January 29th in 2004. That was over 17 years ago now, and that was the same year that Half-Life 2 came out. It's a pretty unfair comparison to compare NeoQuest II to Half-Life 2 though, because as dated as Half-Life 2 is, it is definitely nowhere near as simple as NeoQuest 2 is. And it is very, very simple. Like I said earlier, NeoQuest II is an RPG, but it's a simple one. You basically fight monsters, gain EXP, level up, and choose whatever skills you want to specialize in so you can be ready for the next boss. And that's it. That's really it. It doesn't get too much more complex than that. The skills that you get to choose from for your different characters are no more than simple upgrades too. There are no special elemental weaknesses and strengths that you have to account for, no special ultimate moves you get to whip out, no special skills that work outside of combat, nothing. Basically, you get to choose between more defense, more damage, more speed, or choosing between direct or group damage, and occasionally maybe some stunning skills. There's not much depth to it. But, to be fair, having simple mechanics doesn't necessarily mean that the game is bad. In fact, the whole premise of this video is to show you that this game is underrated, so stick with me here for a little bit. As simple as the skill system is, it is nice that you get a choice between what skills you want to prioritize as you level up. It really makes you feel like you're making progress, and that your successes are a result of your own choices. For example, maybe you're close to death and you miraculously kill your opponent with just 3 HP to spare. That's a good feeling. That singular extra point you had put into your defense or maybe into your attack was just enough to get you through that battle, and you were responsible for that. But back to the cons. There's a lot of grinding you need to do in this game in order to succeed, because if you're not properly leveled, you'll get screwed. This game is actually pretty hard, and when I say hard, it's more tedious than anything. Did I mention that the game refreshes every time you make a single move? That's the worst part. The fact that the game has to load every time you move, or attack, or flee, or heal, or do anything is a grueling experience by today's standards. Even in 2004 standards. And the worst part is, clicking doesn't always register for some reason, and sometimes, the game takes a while to load a page. The game in its entirety isn't exactly a fluid experience. But if you can get past all the clicking and loading, the combat and the exploration aspects of the game don't feel all that bad so long as you're not playing the game in one super long sitting. It's a lot more digestible in smaller chunks, or if you're watching or listening to something while you're playing the game in its slower downtime moments. It's probably much easier to play this game in 2021 than it was in 2004, considering the fact that YouTube and streaming are both such big things now. But let's get back to mechanics. A large chunk of this game requires you to explore around to find towns, secret lairs, hidden NPCs, and bosses. The problem is, you don't have a very wide range of view, and the maps all feel like a maze if you don't know where you're going. That's why I'd recommend using an online guide if you play this game, because becoming hopelessly lost for no reason will only make you frustrated with the game. One great thing about the maps, however, is that they've all got pretty distinctive tile sets. Each chapter of the game clearly has a theme involved, and it's a nice touch to have artwork that actually matches that theme. You're not just exploring the same environment the whole time, nor are you fighting the same enemies over and over again throughout the entire game. So, I definitely commend NeoQuest II on its variety when it comes to the artwork. Speaking of artwork, this game also has cutscenes if you can believe that, but you can't see them because Flash is disabled. Thanks to some archivers on YouTube, however, you can still access these cutscenes if you don't want to use a Flash-friendly browser. NeoQuest II's artwork is definitely one of the game's strong suits despite how simplistic the actual game is. Your party members even visually change their model whenever you equip them with different weapons and armor. It's actually a pretty cool aspect of the game, and it helps you feel like you're making progress and getting stronger as the game goes on. And there's another strong suit that this game has, and that's its story. Let's take a look at that next, and maybe you'll be able to decide whether or not this game is for you. NeoQuest II follows a young warrior named Rohane, who takes up his deceased father's sword to become an adventurer. In the distance, the throne of Meridel has been usurped from King Skarl by his evil advisor Ramtor, who now rules over Meridel through totalitarian corruption and spellbinding magic. Freeing King Skarl becomes Rohane's main objective, and on his quest towards the castle of Meridel, he slowly finds out that things aren't quite what they seem, and that there are forces of evil beyond what is just right in front of him. That's all I can tell you about the basic premise of the game, but I will mention that there's a twist in the story that slowly gets revealed to you and hinted at in the first chapter. I won't spoil what it is for you since you might decide to play it, but it's actually a fairly interesting twist that I quite enjoyed. With that being said, I'm not saying that the story is particularly groundbreaking or anything, but it's decent enough to pay attention to, and that's not something that can be said for a lot of games. I initially went into this game thinking that the narrative would have absolutely no substance to it, but it's actually pretty creative and it surprised me by being way better than I first thought it would be. Furthermore, the writing also isn't especially kiddie, which surprised me even more than the twist did. Now, that isn't to say that stories for kids can't be enjoyed by adults, but it's nice that the writers for NeoQuest II didn't seem to purposefully try to dumb down any of the writing for the sake of writing for children. And that's what helps keep the story engaging. Not only that, but the writing is pretty humorous and silly, and you might get a kick out of some of the dialogue at times. Sure, some of the jokes are just dad jokes or puns or whatever, but still, it's nice that it's lighthearted. The strongest part of NeoQuest II's writing and story, however, is its world building. The game portrays a distinctly Neopian world, and though I wouldn't necessarily call the lore of Neopets super extensive or deep or complex by any means, there's something to be said about appreciating the work that goes into building a unique universe and having people ponder about its implications and its characters. Playing this game gives you a deeper appreciation for its characters and for the site as a whole. And the next time you see characters like King Skarl when you wander around the website, it's easy to think back to this game and what happens in its story. It's a story in a game that enriches your experience on Neopets, because it helps you further understand the Neopian world and its customs and its personalities. And its ability to do that is a nice accomplishment for a game. And now that I've extolled the virtues of NeoQuest II's story and writing, that now begs the question, is this game actually worth playing? I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you all and call NeoQuest II the best game I've ever played. Nor am I going to tell you that it's a game worth putting 30 hours of effort into if you have better games to play in your backlog. But what I will tell you is that it's a game that isn't to be overlooked. It's a game I think is worth checking out if you're a fan of Neopets, or if you want to engage yourself deeper in the Neopets ecosystem as a whole. If you're only planning on playing NeoQuest II and planning to do absolutely nothing else on the Neopets website, I definitely don't think it's worth it. I think this game is best enjoyed if you actually want to start playing Neopets again. Will you still enjoy it if you don't decide to stick around on the website? Sure, I think you might. Especially if you just treat the game as a generic RPG. For something that's free and something that'll give you a nostalgia trip, I think there's still something to be gained by trying this game out regardless of whether or not you actually want to engage with the Neopets website as a whole. It's an experience more than anything else, and I think it's one that can be easily appreciated. So maybe think of it less as a game and more as a reintroduction to a universe that still has its merits today, even if there are arguably better games and better websites out there in this day and age. With all of that being said, I wholeheartedly recommend you checking out NeoQuest II even if it's just for a little bit. See if it's right for you, and see if Neopets in general is right for you. It just might be, whether you're old or young or rich or poor. If you can find any sort of enjoyment out of this website, I think that's a win. And as I said before, Neopets used to be super popular back in the day, so maybe it deserves to be a little more popular than it is right now. You could very well be the next super active user, but that's only if you give it a shot. Let me know down in the comments what you think. And if you're an active Neopets user today, feel free to recommend anything more on the website that you think is worth checking out. I just might check it out myself right after this video is done, so please let me know. Hey guys, so I'm sorry for posting quite infrequently as of late, but I just recently came back from a 2-week vacation in May and I've been working really hard on my book. So if you'd like to see more content like this or just more content in general, please leave a like and a comment and consider subscribing to my channel. If you want to support me further, also consider subscribing to my Patreon, which I'll leave a link to down below. You'll gain access to voting on future content, getting behind the scenes looks at future videos and cut content, and much more. Lastly, I'd like to thank my current patrons, more specifically my single patron Edith Lopez Torres, whose support and votes helped make this video happen. And before you go, check out some of my other videos. I focus on all things writing related, so there's a bit of a variety of things on my channel that you might find interesting. And since you made it to the end of this video, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.